Hello friends, today is a wonderful day, it's a blessed day, and I'd like to greet you and welcome you all to this series that we are going to be doing about Daniel. We're going to be learning about the prophecies of Daniel and what God desires for us to learn and to know about our lives. The purpose of learning the prophecies of Daniel is so that we know where we are in the stream of time, and also for us to understand that our future is in God's hands. My name is Pastor Mavangeni. Today I just want to introduce the book and say to you, do you remember the year 1999? You know, the year 1999, a lot of things happened in the year 1999. We were told that the world was going to end. Do you remember that time? Yes, it was called Y2K. During that time, people were saying the computers were going to shut down. The machines were going to shut down. The world was going to end. People were afraid entering the year 2000. And come December of 1991, the New Year's Eve, 31 December 1999, you know, some of us, we were waiting actually for the world to end. We were waiting to see what was going to happen. You know, they were saying at midnight, the midnight hour, the midnight stroke, everything was just going to shut down. The world was going to end. People were thinking maybe we are going to die, and a lot of things were going to happen. But it came out that nothing really happened. We also that we are still here. That's why you're watching this video today. It was just some psychic predictions that were given by some psychics somewhere. I'm here to tell you today that Daniel is no psychic. Even Jesus acknowledged that Daniel was a prophet of God. If you read Matthew chapter 24 verse 15, it says, "When you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet." So even Jesus acknowledged that Daniel was a prophet of God. You know what I love about God is unique, is different from all the psychics. If we read in Isaiah chapter 46 verse 9, it says, "For I am God and there is no other. I am God and there is none like me." You know, God introduces himself and he says, "I am God and there is no one like me." He goes on to say, Isaiah goes on to say, verse 10, "Declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times, things which are not yet done." You know, God sees the future as we see the present. You know, God sees the future as we see the present. I would say God doesn't see into the future. The future is in God. You understand? The future is in God. You know, so I just want to introduce Daniel. Who was Daniel? Daniel was a prophet of God, a child of God who was raised of God. Daniel was born around 622 BC in an upper class Jewish family. During the time that Daniel was born when the Assyrian kingdom was coming to its end, and the Babylonian Empire was coming into power, as it were, when it was coming into power. And Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar's father, was the king at the time, Nabopolassar. Nabopolassar ruled from around 626 BC, going down to about 605 BC, because Nebuchadnezzar came into power around 605 BC, according to history and what the Bible tells us. And Nebuchadnezzar was the one who brought the kingdom of Babylon into its golden age. He was like the main king, the main ruler who brought this kingdom into its full potential. He realized the full potential under his rulership. Babylon came into its full fruition, and it ruled and conquered almost all the known world at the time. Nebuchadnezzar, what does Nebuchadnezzar really mean? You know, the word Nebu is a Babylonian king. Kadnezzar means prayer for protection. So the name Nebuchadnezzar, it means a prayer for protection to his God. I just thought I should throw that in as we introduce the book of Daniel. During Daniel's time, Israel was under, I would say, 4 kingdoms were dominating the Middle East at the time. It was Egypt, it was Lydia, the Persians, and the Assyrians, and the Babylonians. These were constantly exchanging dominance, ruling the Middle East at that time. When Nebuchadnezzar came into power, he came into power, and he came into an agreement with the king of Israel. If we go to 2 Kings chapter 24, verse 1 and 2, 2 Kings chapter 24, verse 1 and 2. Let's quickly rush there and understand the context of the story. It says, in his days, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up, and Joachim became his vassal for 3 years. Then he turned and rebelled against him. As we introduce the book of Daniel, let's remember, I want you to take note and remember that Babylon came and attacked Jerusalem 3 times. As we are reading this on 2 Kings chapter 24, this is the first time that Nebuchadnezzar gets into an agreement with Joachim. And Joachim became his vassal, as it were, his servant, as it were. He was put in charge. Nebuchadnezzar came against Jerusalem, and Joachim was put in charge as a king, reporting to Nebuchadnezzar. And the Bible says, and he was his vassal for 3 years. Then he turned and rebelled against him. This is the first time that we see the king rebelling against the rulership of the Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar. So Nebuchadnezzar came against Jerusalem in 605 BC. This is the time when Daniel was taken, and some of the few vessels of the temple of God were taken. And then we see the second time that Nebuchadnezzar comes against Jerusalem. The second time was 597 BC. When Nebuchadnezzar came against Jerusalem in 597 BC, this is the time when the prophet Ezekiel was captured, was also taken, including 10,000 other slaves. They were taken during this second siege, or this second capture of the city of Jerusalem. Where do we read this? 2 Kings chapter 24, verse 8. 2 Kings chapter 24, verse 8. And it reads, Joachim was 18 years old when he became king. After Joachim was king, his predecessor Joachim came. And it says in verse 8, Joachim was 18 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. His mother's name was Nehushata, the daughter of Elathan of Jerusalem. So when Joachim now was king, verse 11 says, and Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came against the city. This is the second time. I mentioned earlier that Nebuchadnezzar came against Jerusalem 3 times. So this is now the second time when we see Nebuchadnezzar coming against the city of Jerusalem. And verse 11 says, 2 Kings chapter 24, verse 11, it says, and Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came against the city, and his servants were besieging it. So the second time we see Jerusalem being besieged by Nebuchadnezzar. And it says, it continues, and it says, verse 12, then Joachim, king of Judah, his mother, his servants, his princes, and his officers went out to the king of Babylon, and to the king of Babylon, and the king of Babylon in the 8th year of his reign took him prisoner. You see, this is the second time Nebuchadnezzar comes against Jerusalem. And the king, now the king at the time, Joachim, was taken prisoner by the king of Babylon, who was Nebuchadnezzar. And what happened there when he came against the city the second time? Listen to this. Verse 14, it reads, also he carried into captivity all Jerusalem, all the captains and all the mighty men of valor, 10,000 captives, as I have mentioned, and all the craftsmen and smiths. None remained except the poorest people of the land. You see the wisdom of Nebuchadnezzar, what he did. He took the craftsmen, the intelligent people, those who knew how to make weapons of war. All of them were taken except the poor of the land. Those he discarded and said, these poor people, I have got no need of them. And when he did that, when Nebuchadnezzar did that, he put a puppet government on the throne. Let's read 2 Kings chapter 24, verse 17. 2 Kings chapter 24, verse 17. Then the king of Babylon made Mattaniah, Joachim's uncle, king in his place, and changed his name to Zedekiah. We know Zedekiah. Zedekiah was put on the throne as a puppet government to rule Jerusalem, to rule those poor people who were left in the city. And the Bible says that this guy, Zedekiah, who was put on the throne, the uncle to Joachim, he also rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar. Where do we see this? Verse 20. For because the anger of the Lord, this happened in Jerusalem and Judah, and he finally cast them out in his presence. Then Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. When Zedekiah rebelled against the king, this is the third time. When Zedekiah rebelled, Nebuchadnezzar came against Jerusalem the third time. This was around 586 BC when Nebuchadnezzar came against the city the third time. And when he came against the city the third time, he utterly destroyed the city. He utterly destroyed the city. Is there evidence of this in the Bible? 2 Kings chapter 25, verse 6. So they took the king and brought him up to the king of Babylon at Rebiah, and they pronounced judgment on him. That is Hezekiah. That is Zedekiah. Verse 7. Then they killed the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, put out his eyes, the eyes of Zedekiah, bound him with bronze fetters, and took him to Babylon. That's the third time we see Babylon, Jerusalem, being destroyed by the king Nebuchadnezzar. This was just an introduction. Verse 9, it says, he burnt the house of the Lord and the king's house and the houses of Jerusalem. That is all the houses of the great he burnt with fire. And all the army of the Chaldees who were with the captain of the guard broke down the walls of Jerusalem all around. You see, the third time that Nebuchadnezzar came against the city of Jerusalem, this is the time that we see the city being destroyed. But at this time, Daniel and his friends, the first time that they were captured, they were already in in Babylon there. So this is just an introduction of the book of Daniel. We are going to learn as we continue in Daniel chapter 2, as Nebuchadnezzar dreams a dream. And we are going to understand and learn more as we continue to study the book of Daniel. May God continue to bless you.